And welcome to another episode of the Andre The Beast Show. Man, I'm sorry, I just got caught up in the moment with the music. Today, we're going to talk about generations. And what I mean by generations is understanding what I went through, what you might have went through growing up, and more importantly, something that in the last couple of months, we as adults haven't paid attention to, and that's how our young generation is viewing us and how they're viewing everything about the world and the impact that this last couple of months, or really within the last year, has had on us. We've taken in consideration us as adults, but we really haven't focused on how much this has impacted the next generation, our kids, our loved ones. And today I felt like I need to address that and address it with not only an inspiring young man, but a motivational young man, a young guy that deeply has captivated me, or he wouldn't have been here, who I've seen take adversity and turn it into positive. On the show today, I have Josh
Brinkman
and David. No, I'm just joking. David Benz. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on.
If we can't laugh, then we got a problem. Okay. So, Josh, welcome to the show. So, you trained with me. Your mom brought you to me on the ideal of exercising. You definitely had the mental capacity, and then you start training. But tell the viewers a little bit about who you are.
Right. So I'm currently a high school student. I'm a senior in high school. I've applied to college. I'm planning on attending Indiana University next year. And through the entire COVID pandemic, I guess there's been a lot of challenges, and not just for me, but for everyone as well. And so I guess I'm here on the show today to kind of share my perspective and what's in store for the future.
Which colleges did you look at?
I looked at a handful of different colleges. I looked at Purdue, IU, a lot of in-state schools, and I looked at West Point as well, the service academy. And I didn't end up getting a nomination for that, but yeah, it was definitely a good process, a good application experience to really boost my knowledge about the military and the academies and build my motivation to work harder in life.
We talked about the U. You didn't think about that one time?
I mean, a little bit. It crossed my mind a few times, but I mean, a lot of my friends go to IU, and I feel like that's the college for me after exploring their different programs.
When you came to me as...
Wait. What U?
Come on, man. The U. 80s, 90s, 2000, the national champions, the Hurricanes. Come on, we all know about the U. Come on now. If I'm going to instill something in him, I want him to go to the U. But unfortunately, he decided to go to IU, which I like IU. It's a fine school. But
hey, for what it's worth, I still have my offer letter from University of Miami. I went to IU. So
you still got a good choice. So when you came to me, you had an aspiration of going to West Point. Why West Point?
West Point has a lot of the values that really reflects what I strive to achieve in my life. Service, duty, honor, country. A lot of those values are what I strive to achieve, and just the whole concept of going to a school focused on service afterwards was really something I wanted to pursue.
Was it challenging getting nominated, or what's the protocol for even considering West Point?
Right. So it's a very, very selective process, especially this year in particular. They had a large influx of applicants. So just kind of summarizing the process, you have to fill out a separate application from what usual colleges do. You have to write several essays. You have to have several teacher recommendations. You have to take a fitness assessment, a medical assessment, and then you also have to get a nomination from either the vice president or a sitting member of Congress.
Were there any areas in which you was weak at? Did you get accepted? And if so, yeah. If not, then what were some of the challenges that prevented you from going there? And what did you do what made you decide to go another route? Right.
So I was a very strong candidate academically. That was an area in which I excelled in. However, the fitness component of it was especially challenging for me. It's why I sought out exercise in my life and to try and improve my physical condition, as well as securing the nomination is also a very competitive process, which is kind of separate from the application itself. I ended up getting 2 interviews with members of Congress. However, I did not receive a nomination due to just the selectiveness and limited number of seats.
What did you wind up doing? Because I had to be a letdown, because when you came to me and we started training, your strength and everything just skyrocketed off the roof. So I know at that time you was really looking forward to getting into West Point, but unfortunately situations changed. So did you feel bad about yourself, or did you just stay in that frame of mind and say, you know what, that door closed, I'm gonna open up another one?
Well, it was definitely discouraging not to be accepted. However, I learned a lot going through the process, and I have definitely grown as a person going through that process. And more than anything, that's what I'm proud of. And using what I learned from that experience and using what I learned from training with you through exercising and stuff, I feel like that is going to have such a positive impact on my life moving forward that in the long run, I'm not really that discouraged about not being accepted.
What were some of the discouraging things that you learned, and what were some of the positive things from being turned down?
Well, being turned down, I definitely had to look at different areas, different places to apply, try and figure out a different plan in life. So that took some time to try and comprehend, try and seek out different opportunities. But the positive is I'm now, accepted to Indiana University, which I will be attending in the fall, and there's a lot of opportunities there with what I want to study, public policy, as well as even continuing to pursue the military through ROTC and other programs.
Explain to me why public policy.
Well, throughout high school, starting even my freshman year, I started to get involved in my school's political club, CHS Young Republicans, and I became the vice president of that club and just continued my involvement in politics. I've had a lot of great experiences volunteering for candidates and really exploring the political process and how policy affects people's lives.
Did you ever think that training at 5 o'clock and 6 a.m. in the morning with business leaders and 2 high-powered lawyers would just be like, oh, what could I have asked for? I know David's got something he want to ask you too.
Oh, well, no, I got, and I mean this with the utmost sincerity. The fact that you kept coming back, Josh, and I don't want to harp on or what's the saying, pour salt in the wound or anything like that.
Yeah.
Most people, and I'm not going to say most people I know. I'm going to be even more general. Most people, had they suffered a similar setback, they would have stopped, and you didn't stop. It's almost like you went harder.
Yeah.
And we do. We've talked about this so many times. We've talked about it, outside of the podcast, during the podcast, et cetera, just about having that beast mode mentality, and that, and certainly my excitement on being on this particular episode is that, boy, what a better way to describe what beast mode is than to point to you as an example and say, that's exactly what beast mode is.
Yeah.
I'm not doing this to get to a specific result. I'm doing this because of who I am. And I think you epitomize that. And then the other thing that kind of excites me about this episode and getting the chance to talk to you more in depth about this kind of stuff is, I think Dre and I have at times. I'm not going to speak for you, Dre, but
I'm wondering now, what's he about to say?
No. In fleeting moments, I'll be able to exhibit that beast mode. But how I learned to get there, I think, and you introduced it correctly, I think, by saying, generationally speaking, how I learned to get there is much, much different than how you've learned to get there. And I'd like to explore that because, as I've said to you before, my immediate future kind of depends upon your future in a sense. And how do I at my age relate to that, and how do you relate to what I've gone through? And so I do think it's exciting to talk about these kinds of things, but just to level set, because you introduced this at the outset. So you and I went to the same high school that you're going to currently, which is kind of a fun fact. But it's much, much different than when I went there. I mean, for a whole host of reasons, it's much, much different. If you ignored the 800-pound, or the pink elephant in the room, if you ignored the pink elephant in the room, it would have been much different. But let's talk about the pink elephant, COVID. As a result of COVID, your high school career, your high school experience is vastly different than anything I could have ever dreamt of. I won't say how many years, but it was decades, decades ago, when I went there. How has that been for you? How has that experience been for you the past year?
It has been a radically different experience from my other years of high school. So the way that Carmel has it set up now is we go to school every other day on a hybrid schedule, and then the days we're not at school, we're on a virtual schedule. And so I'm very fortunate that we're still able to go in person and do that safely with distancing and everything. The school's only at half capacity at a given time.
Which is still a huge capacity, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's 4,000. It's close to, is it over 8,000 students at this point, or close to 8,000?
No, we're at 5,400 students right now.
Still, I mean, that's a lot of students.
Yeah.
That's a lot of students. But you're at half capacity.
Right.
And just what is there so much of the experience, and man, I listen to adults talk about adults. I'm sorry, I don't mean anything. Old folks. I listen to old folks. Oh, it sucks that the kids don't go to school. I don't think we really know what it's like. I don't think anybody's taken the time to there's got to be fear, right? Because if you were full time, the exposure that you would have to COVID is much greater than I'm going to have in an office space that has, a third of the density, a quarter of the density that you have in a high school, right? But that's not what you have. You have a circumstance where you're going every other day, and I just think it's very difficult, and it upsets me. I'm saying that in a politically correct manner. It upsets me. Get your hand on the thing where you bleep me out. Yeah. It upsets me to know that people of my generation, that people at my age, we can sort of pontificate and preach as to what we think things should, or what things should be happening, but we haven't bothered to ask you the question: what is it that you're going through, and how has the experience been for you? And, what would you like to see happen?
So there's many different components of high school, I guess, that are different. The most changed is probably orchestra. I play the viola in our school symphony orchestra. I'm the principal player. And the whole rehearsing experience, trying to work with your section to bring together a piece of music, it's much harder than it was in the past, where you could have a stand partner, rehearse more often, rehearse in closer quarters. And now we're all distanced 6 feet apart, hardly able to communicate or rehearse together. And it's definitely added challenge and adversity to overcome.
The orchestra sounds much bigger than what it really is, because you're 6 feet apart.
Oh, yeah. Like we take up the entire room now, because we have to be 6 feet apart in order to maintain COVID.
That's insane. I hadn't even thought about that. I honestly had not thought about that. Wow. So, I asked the question, when you talk to your friends, do you guys want to go back full time? I know Carmel has announced that it's not going to go back full time until next fall at the earliest, right?
Right. There's
So
a
you're
lot
going
of
to graduate. You're going to your high school career is going to end with the last 2 years being something different than a normal high school career.
Almost isolated, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you feel about that?
Well, I've definitely kept in communication with my friends, whether, it's in person, if we can do that safely, or virtually. I know we still occasionally play games together over the internet and stuff, but it's definitely a much different experience. You don't get to go to the same in-person events that you would on regular years. Luckily, the school is planning to try and have an in-person prom kind of day, but a lot of the other events from this school year, such as homecoming and various other events, have been canceled because of COVID. And so the social aspect is definitely lacking there.
Josh, when we was out last and we had the guy day after we got done training, we talked about the difference in our generation and your generation. What do you see differently? You talked about it a little bit. I thought it was very informative when you analyzed our generation compared to what you're going through. Can you share with me a little bit on how you look at the generations, our generations versus you guys' generation?
I want to say the biggest difference between your generation and my generation is the willingness to move forward, to overcome problems and overcome adversity and stick with it.
Explain that more.
So a lot of people in my generation, at least, or of course I'm generalizing, but of what I've seen, a lot of people are not willing to continue going forward if they face a problem. Right. They'll just give up, try something else, do something other than pursuing the goal they once were. And for me, I've been trying to move forward no matter what problems I encounter.
Why do you think you have that determination? Like, who in your family? Is it your mom? Is it your dad? Is it a combination of both? Is it the people that you are in contact with? Because I know your mom. I haven't met your dad yet. But I noticed that your mom really goes out of her way to try to surround you with a positive, strong force. Do you feel that coming from your mom? Is she like, are both of them the reason that you're the way you are now?
Right. Yeah, my mom definitely does a great job trying to get me to hang out with people who are dedicated, committed to achieving their goals. And I believe that has been a very positive influence in my life, trying to learn from them and how to continue moving forward no matter what is in the way.
What are some of the things that really get to you? I mean, I think we capitalized on this a little bit. I'm trying to remember everything that we talked about that day, but your generation, like David said, I mean, I've never been in a pandemic before. I mean, sorry, never have. But being an adult, I have to know how to survive, protect, and continue to move on. With you, what really disgusts you about everything that you're seeing right now? When you go home and you look at the world, what's the one thing that just really gravitates to you and go, damn? And if that damn is what can I do to change it? What would it be?
I'm really disappointed in the hatred that is still in the world, even with the pandemic going on. It's a problem that affects everyone, no matter where in life you are. And the fact that people are still trying to tear down others for really just stupid reasons, it's discouraging to see that.
If you was, you know where I'm going. I've always said you're going to be the next president. If you had to change that, what would you do? What would you do?
I would try to, I don't have an exact policy solution to this, but right. I would try to foster a culture that focuses on building others up rather than tearing them down. Trying to support other people rather than picking out the flaws in how people live their lives.
Well, you're doing something with the United Nations or amateur nations. Elaborate on that, because that's kind of what.
Sure. Model United Nations.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So you're kind of doing that already role playing it, but those role plans can actually transcend into actual policies, right?
Right. So Model United Nations is a club I'm involved in. I'm the current officer of the CHS charter. And what the club is focused on is simulating the operations of the United Nations. And so every person participating in the committee is assigned a country or a role, depending on the type of committee it is. And you have to work together with other countries, whether your position disagrees with them or not, to try and come up with a solution that helps the most people as possible.
Give me an example of something that was a conflict and your input played a key role in neutralizing the arm race.
The arm race.
Yeah, that's like it was total chaos. Now you got to stand. What did you do different just to neutralize everything?
Okay, so one of the committees I participated in was designated survivor, a situation in which during the State of the Union, the Capitol was attacked and essentially the entire continuity of government was destroyed. And so in the event something like that happens, a designated survivor is chosen to sit out of the address and to assume the role of presidency. And in that case, I was the acting attorney general after the attack. And my role really was to maintain the values that we see in the Constitution, to make sure that legally we are doing this process correct and that we are maintaining the rights of the American people. And so I focused on that through both my crisis notes and through joint directives with other delegates in the committee, trying to make sure that we keep the American dream alive, that we make sure people maintain their freedoms despite such a crisis happening.
That's an interesting question. What is the American dream? From your perspective, what is the American dream? And by the way, I'm sure you did a better job than Jeff Sessions did. Kidding, joking, cheap shot. Sorry. What is the American dream? From if you were speaking from, you were elected by your generation to convey the message of what the American dream is, what would you say?
Well, the American dream is different for everyone. It's really having the freedoms and opportunities to pursue your personal goals in life. In the United States, we live in such a great society, such a fortunate upbringing to be able to have those freedoms to pursue whatever we want in life. And there still are institutional challenges preventing a lot of people from doing that, but it's definitely something we need to work together as a nation to try and overcome. I know other countries don't share the same freedoms that we do and don't have the same opportunities for progression as a lot of American citizens do.
See, I think that's interesting. And I think that's interesting, that description of it, because I think what it reflects is, I think it reflects, if I dare, I think it reflects that our generation, Dre, has had some positive impacts. It has. Let's not pat ourselves on the back yet, but I do think that we've done a few things right here and there.
Such as what? What have we done right?
Well, you just listened to his description of the American dream. Mm-hmm. Okay, I think if you polled anybody who was our age group or older,
right,
I think the definition of an American dream would be much, much simpler. And I don't want to say not as inclusive, but kind of is not as inclusive.
What's your definition?
Oh, well, my definition is very simple. It's very simple. It's for my kids to have a better life than I do.
Okay.
So, and that's really not in depth. It's not insightful like his definition is, and that's why I say, before, at the risk of patting ourselves on the back, maybe we should take a victory lap and say, hey, we've had some kind of positive impact, because our definition of what the American dream is expanding. It is expanding. It is expanding to become more inclusive and maybe a little bit more defined or more attainable by more.
Right.
So, in any event, I thought, I jumped on that question a little bit quickly, but we one of the things that we were talking about was, okay, well, what if I'm sitting here and we've talked about this, if my future is dependent upon the success or failure of my future is dependent upon the success or failure of your future, from your perspective, and I mean, this is I'm tying this all together here. Because I hear so many people my age, I hear so many people in my group, my generation, where I am in life, saying, "Oh, well, this, it's got to be this, it's got to be that, it's got to be this. This is what's wrong, or that's what's wrong, or this is what needs to be fixed, or that what's needs," without actually asking you the question, which is, what can we be doing better? What can my generation be doing better to help you be more successful?
I think the best thing is to understand the perspectives of others. Because you said that your perspective of the American dream is having your children lead a better life than what you have led. However, that idea is different for everyone in terms of what a better life exactly is. People have different goals, different aspirations. And so it's important that we as a society try to understand everyone's point of view and perspective when it comes to that. So understanding as many perspectives as possible and trying to make the American dream as adaptable as possible to those perspectives.
You know, you mentioned something about focusing too much on the future. Explain to me what that means.
In simple terms, just focusing too much on what the future is going to have in store rather than living in the moment now. Trying to lead a great life now rather than trying to worry about how the future is going to treat me.
What do you think?
Is that something that you do? Do you feel like you spend too much time worrying about the future and not enough enjoying the moment?
I think that's definitely a pitfall of mine. I definitely worry a lot about what's in store.
I had a nickname when I was in high school. You want to know what it was?
Yeah, please.
Grandpa. Grandpa. Because I was always, I mean, that was my line. It was, you know, I gotta not do today because I can get it tomorrow.
Right.
And it was always worried about tomorrow. And honestly, that's something that I probably still struggle with to this day. And I constantly have to remind myself of that stupid phrase. What is it? The past is history. The future is not even promised, but today is a present, right? So take advantage of the present. And I don't do that, but but at least I try.
You talk about your work ethic. I'm looking at your 20 for 20. Mm-hmm. And believe me, it's a great list of 20 for 20s. And you talk about your work ethic. Help me pronounce the word.
Work ethic.
Thank you. You definitely do perform that constantly. Why is that such a major focus for you?
I everything I do in life, I try to do it to the fullest. I don't go halfway and expect the results that I'm expecting. I try to do everything to the best of my ability, essentially.
You see our generation. What are some of the things that you question about the generation that me, Dave, your mom, and your dad grew up in? There has to be, because trust me, I have a daughter, she's 15, and an oldest daughter, and what kills me is to go, your generation, you're old, or blah, 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 blah. When you look at us, what do you question about? What do you take positive, and what do you look at and question?
Well, we already discussed this, but I mean, your generation has done a lot, has contributed a lot to my generation in terms of our upbringing and our perspective on the world. So that is a great positive. As for a negative, I don't really understand all the perspectives of those of your generation. But speaking generally, I think the biggest thing is kind of accepting new ideas as they arise.
You mean we have a hard time accepting change, basically?
Accepting change, yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I mean, we've actually talked about this off air, not to like fool the audience or anything like that, but we've talked about this outside, and I can't take credit for this. This is one of our other colleagues who mentioned this, and that was sort of the creation. And I think what you're getting to is the creation of an environment where you feel safe. You feel safe to fail, actually, because failure can teach so much.
We couldn't fail.
We were not allowed. Well, I'm not going to. No, you know what? I'm not going to say that. I'm not.
We was afraid to fail.
We absolutely were afraid to fail.
Right.
We absolutely were afraid to fail. But it wasn't like somebody was standing over me with a with a switch getting ready to hit me if I had.
Right.
What's my wife has the phrase for it. Something about knocking your head. Or in any case, yeah. I mean, it wasn't like I did it out of fear of reprisal for failing.
Right.
But I definitely, I mean, it's just reality. The reality is that as much as I loved my parents, as much as I attribute any kind of success, if you even want to call it success, I do to my parents, and the love that they showed me. I was afraid to fail. I was absolutely afraid to fail. It did not seem like it was an option to me.
Well, just look at, you just said it. Well, be real. Our generation, failure was not an option. Let me rephrase it.
Which is not to say that we didn't, because we did all the time,
yeah.
and I still do to this day.
But I think the failure not an option piece came in because you had so many people, whether they was family, whether they was friends or whatever, your peers were your judge. You know, you wanted to make sure that you lived to the expectations that was designed for you.
Now you're getting into something really interesting. Now you're getting something.
That's what the show's about.
No. Now you're getting something really interesting because I think my biggest flaw as a parent is I don't want my kids to go through the same failure that I went through. I did fail. I absolutely failed. I did not get punished for the failure that I went through. It was more self-imposed than anything else.
Right.
But in fourth grade, I walked into the girls' bathroom by an accident. Do you know, I can still remember that like it was yesterday. In my mind, it's still as raw and painful as though it just happened yesterday. Okay? And my primary purpose in being a parent has been to shield my kids from those types of experiences. What have I done? I mean, that's part of who I am today, right?
And then when they do fail, it's so catastrophic that they don't want to continue working.
That's right. So we've created, our generation has actually created the problem. But you know what?
But we also neutralized the problem, because I'm not afraid to tell my children it's okay to fail. Just, did you learn from it? What can we do to make it better?
And that's exactly what I said. Let's come back to this, but let's get back to this topic sort of circuitously, because one of the things that you list, and I love this, number 12 on your list. Okay.
Wait a minute. What's number 12?
Number 12 on your list of negatives, on your 20 for 20
Oh,
list.
I know what that is.
Yes. What is it?
Is it ignorance?
That's right.
Because we just talked about,
yes,
as you got older, you hate the word.
You hate
ignorance.
I don't hate ignorance. No. It's so just to elaborate, what you didn't catch in the conversation that Dre and I were having. I don't like stupidity. Stupidity is voluntary ignorance. I have no problem with ignorance whatsoever, and I am very, very ignorant. I am extremely ignorant. Ignorant to me means a lack of knowledge. So I have one of two choices. I can either go out and gather that knowledge, or surround myself by people, to your parents' point, or to your mom's point, surround myself with people who lead me to that knowledge. Or I can voluntarily accept that I'm ignorant and just continue to be ignorant. And that, to me, is stupidity. And I used to have more sympathy for people who were who exhibited stupidity, because it was kind of like, okay, well, they just don't realize what they're doing. Now I'm getting impatient, because it's like, oh crap, I don't have that much time left. So I'm getting very, very impatient. But I think there's a huge, huge difference between ignorance and stupidity. And ignorance is not necessarily a bad thing, and that's why it stuck out to me on your list. Because look, I'm ignorant. I'll be the first person to say,
right,
I'm really ignorant. There is a tremendous amount of knowledge that I simply don't have, and it's not because I don't want it. I do want it. I just haven't had the opportunity to gather it, and that's why I say let's come back to it. Because how do you get rid of ignorance? Well, you gather the knowledge. So the way that I ensure your success, and ultimately ensure my success, is to make sure that you have the environment in which you can gather that knowledge. and it's an environment where you feel safe gathering the knowledge, where you're not afraid to make mistakes, et cetera, et cetera. And again, I can't take credit for this. This is something that Bob, one of our, Bob, that Bob has really advocated in terms of making sure that we create an environment where people are not afraid to make mistakes, that they are afraid to. And I do think that this actually goes back to something that you said at the outset, which is you get really frustrated with the hatred that goes on. And I think a hatred is just an extension of a lack of knowledge. It's ignorance. I think hatred is driven by ignorance.
Well, maybe it's the lack, I'm just spinballing this, but we talked about this. Maybe it's the lack of the generations and the way that environments are set up in your household. Let me explain this, because we talked about this. When I grew up, my dad did not acknowledge the words "I love you" until I was 30 years old. Like you said, you remember the bathroom incident. I remember that incident like it was no tomorrow. So, go to work. The dads go to work. The mom stayed home. The way that affection was displayed was, as long as you had a roof over your head and food in the mouth, the job was done. As I got older, let's say growing up with your age, and I became a man, I started realizing what was the handicaps that I was dealing with growing up. What was I liking growing up? And believe it or not, the compassion of the word love was non-existent. So I translate that now into pretty much everything I do. I love to go to work. I love helping my clients. I love my family. I love my relationships with my friends. When you don't have that in the household, now we bought a different environment now. Let's be real. We brought a different environment into our homes, whether we want to admit it or not. That was the main key. And could it have led to the manifestation of hatred? Probably could. I mean, get real. If you don't get told, if I don't tell a plant to grow and give it sunshine, it begins to welter. But if I nurture it and give it sunshine and water, the nutrients that it needs to sustain life, it can flourish into the most beautiful flower you've ever seen. You probably get that all the time in your household now. So naturally, that's going to even energize you more. If we had that, not saying that everybody didn't have it, but just say if everybody had it, maybe the world might be a little bit different. Maybe we might see even a changing of the guards back then and constantly moving forward. I think the reason that young Josh is doing what he's doing now is because we now, probably the majority of us in our generation, clearly missed that opportunity, and we saw it. Whether or not we recognize it, the ones that recognize it were able to move forward and probably blossom the next generation. Did that make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It does. And whereas I think you could make the argument, as you just did, that on the family front, things are more enlightened than maybe what they were when our parents were raising us.
Yeah.
My concern is more with the professional environment. And, Josh, as an 18-year-old graduating a very good high school, getting ready to embark on a very good, strong collegiate career. What's on your wish list when you enter the professional world? What's on your wish list in terms of what kind of environment you want to see? I'm not going to make it a leading question by saying what's on your wish list to create an environment where you feel safe to make mistakes, but what's on your wish list for an environment where you feel you can excel?
The biggest goal for me in my professional work is to make a difference in as many lives as possible for the better. That's kind of what I've been basing my high school career around. That's what I want to base my college experience around. And ultimately, later in my occupation, I want to be able to make an influence in people's lives, improve them for the better, allow them to have those opportunities that I did to pursue what I want in life and achieve those goals.
What are your fears? Let's be real. We living in time. Let's be real. We living in times of uncertainties. So, what are your fears? You just can't go to school. You know where you want to be, but there's still got to be some fear factors there.
I guess my biggest fear is not being able to achieve what I want to achieve, no matter how hard I try. That won't stop me from trying as hard as I can, but it definitely sits in the back of my mind. What if I try my hardest and it doesn't pay off? What if I don't end up where I want to be in life? So that does kind of startle me a little bit, not being able to do what I want to do with my life.
Do you think about it a lot now because of you're 18 and getting ready to start as a freshman? Does it register more than what you thought it would have registered before?
Yeah, it's definitely a bigger part of my thought process now that I'm going to be getting a new chapter of life. Thinking about, what is the best way I can succeed in college in order to later succeed in the workplace, and how to best set myself up for success. Wow.
See, I wish somebody had asked me that when I was growing up, like going off to college. Nobody sat down and said, what are you afraid of? And technically it's the same thing you did. What if I don't? What if I don't make it? What if there was always the what if factor? What about you?
Okay, well, I'm going to say something, and
what are you going to say?
I'm going to say something, and Josh, you're going to forget entirely what I'm about to say, and that's fine, because I'm sure, I am as sure as my name is David. I am certain that somebody told me this when I was 18 years old, and maybe not sitting in the chair that you were sitting in, but sitting in a chair, no doubt. Somebody told me exactly what I'm about to tell you. Just get over it, because it's going to happen. Okay, you're going to give something your absolute all, and you're not going to get the result that you thought that you should have gotten from that. And when you start to get wise, and when you start to really enjoy life, and I'm not speaking from the standpoint of somebody who's there yet. I'm getting there. I'm probably closer. I hope I'm closer than you are. But when you start to get wise, and when you start to get happy with life, where life is, it's when you start defining what it is your expectations are, as opposed to letting the world around you define what those expectations are. For me, I try to remind myself that the expectations are that I give it my all. And if I've given my all, regardless of the result, I've been successful. Right? So that's what my thought is.
On a lighter note, I'm looking at your 20 for 20. Remember, that was my idea.
Right.
I see on your 20 for 20, you like to write. You like writing. Is that your way of releasing? Tell me how that came about.
Well, I'm definitely a much better writer than I am speaker. I'm trying to work on that. I'm taking a speech class right now, trying to improve my verbal communication skills. But
let me know who you contacted.
But writing is just something I can do to express myself in the best way possible. Because I could take time putting thought into really how I want to convey myself. And it make the most sense given the situation.
I'm always calling you the next president. How does that make you feel?
Well, I don't know if
I'm putting too much on your plate, ain't it?
Yeah, not sure about the presidency quite yet. Still have to, figure out kind of what path I want to take in terms of after college and such. But like I said before, I want to do something with my life in which I can make the most change for the good in people's lives. And so civic service is definitely something I've, looked into, I've been inspired by, and something I would potentially like to pursue later on in life.
You got something you want to ask?
Oh, I've got lots that I want to ask.
Go ahead. Hit him. He's here now.
You say networking. You list networking on that.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So, God, and I apologize, because it almost feels like I'm giving advice, and Dre knows my thought on me, of all people, giving advice.
But there's nothing wrong with you giving advice. We like your advice.
But what do you mean by mentioning networking?
So I've been very fortunate in my high school experience to work with several political leaders, to work on several elections. I've interned on 2 congressional elections here in Indiana, and that experience has given me the opportunity to meet a lot of people and learn, like I was mentioning before, different perspectives on different issues. And for me, networking is meeting people with perspectives that differ from your own and growing from that. And also having a connection to someone who can potentially, you can help later in life, or they can help you later in life.
Yeah, I mean, I really hope that your audience is listening to this right now, Dre, because honestly, if that's a lesson that you learned at 18 years old, you're already so far ahead of the game as to where most people are when they're 18 years old. You truly are, because that generally comes later in life. But I've said it on an earlier episode, right, when I talked about hitching your wagon to a star. Episode
number 3, maybe.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
3.
Yep. And it's the whole concept is to get to where you want to go. You can do one of 2 things. You can what's the word I'm looking for? You can cut that road yourself. You can get in the Bobcat and grade it and pave it and all that kind of stuff, or you can hitch your wagon to somebody who's already been there. And that's the concept of networking. The concept of networking is using the relationships, not using the relationships, but taking advantage of the relationships that exist around you, so that you're not forced to reinvent the wheel. And I think a lot of people miss out on that. And a lot of people end up spending needless energy to recreate things that they don't necessarily have, were they to have used that.
Well, it also goes back to what you just said. It allows you to get rid of the ignorance and stupid, because when you don't know, then you find people that do know. So that gives you that insight on moving forward in your career as well. Didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
We're going to, before we wrap up, I'm going to ask you a question. You're 18 years old, graduating class where you guys will probably do it on Zoom, which I'm sorry for that. But you're a very young, inspiring young man. I'm glad that I have the opportunity to train you, and I know you're going to go way, way past what you could ever imagine. Leave the people with something positive.
I guess what I can say is, no matter what your path is in life, no matter what your end goal is, kind of what you were saying earlier, just give it your all, because trying your best at something is all you can do. And if you try your best, oftentimes you'll see it'll take you further than you expected. And you can achieve great things by giving it your all.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Andre The Beast Show. I'd like to thank Josh and David for being here. Please subscribe, rate, and follow us on your favorite social media platforms. Once again, this is Andre The Beast Show. Thanks.